Stations are one of my favorite things to do with Spanish class because you can get a lot done in a very short amount of time. I already have a video where I've shared some of my favorite tips for organizing and streamlining stations, but today what I wanted to do is to give you kind of a bank of activities and ideas you could look for when you're trying to plan stations in your classroom and you're going, I'm out of ideas for listening activities. That's what this video is all about. So let's get right into it. Hi, my name is Ashley, aka Scenario Spanish, where I provide easy to use resources to save you time and energy while you're lesson planning. If you're new here, I just want to make sure that you know that links to everything that I mentioned in this video are going to be down in the description box below. Okay, so I've shared before on my channel about how to make stations run smoothly, but if you missed that video, you're going to want to make sure you check that out because that is everything that you need to know about organizing stations in your classes. This is more about what to actually do in the stations, but if you're not sure how to run them in your class, you don't want to miss this. The other thing I wanted to mention to you before we get into it is that my experience is all in secondary Spanish classes, Spanish 1 and 2, 6th through 12th graders. If you're looking for tips for elementary school, you might be able to use some of these activities, but I'm not sure. The last thing is that I took all of these activity ideas and I tried to organize them into reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And if you saw my other video on stations, it's because I like to do 4 stations at a time, and I generally organize them in that way. Just before we get into it, I wanted to make sure that I noted that, some of the reading activities are kind of like writing, and some of the writing activities use reading skills, and obviously listening and speaking have some overlap. So just give me some grace, but I tried my best to kind of organize them into these skills for you, and just know it's okay if your students are practicing more than one skill at any given station. No big deal. I also have blog posts, videos, and info about how to do each of these activities. This video would get super long if I gave you tutorials on each and every single one of these activities, and I don't want to waste your time. So what I'm going to do is share with you an idea and maybe a quick description, but if there's something that's new to you and you want to learn more about it, again, links to everything that I mentioned, and that includes blog posts, details, information, and tutorials will be down in the description box below. Okay, are we ready? Let's get started with reading. One of my favorite reading activities to do in stations is the game Mi Lapis, and it's super fun to do in either a small group or in pairs of students. Pareja Mentirosa is another great reading activity to do. One student reads things out loud while intentionally changing details. The other student is listening and calling them out when they hear something wrong. Partner Matamoscas is a great option for stations. Also, reading with emotion is super fun in stations, especially because some students are just more comfortable when you do that activity in a smaller group setting. Read and draw is a great station option, especially if you want students to work individually at their stations rather than in pairs or in a small group. And you already know that I love gallery walks. I've shared a lot about them on my channel and how I like to use them, but one great option is to pull a few of the readings that you might be using in a gallery walk and instead give them comprehension activities to go with it. I have a great example of that in my Hispanic Heritage Month reading activities video on my channel, so I'll make sure to link that for you here. But basically, you're going to pull 1, 2, maybe even 4 readings, 1 reading per kid, however you want to do it, and then they're going to complete comprehension questions to go with them. I've talked before about how much I love Corre en Círculos on my channel, and the mini puzzle version is fantastic for stations. If you don't know how to make them mini, I have an easy tutorial on how to print them smaller for you, and I will again make sure to link that for you here. Last but not least of the reading activities I wanted to share with you is this slides sorting activity. Basically what it is you're going to take details or pieces or sentences from a story, you're going to put them on different slides from a presentation and shuffle them all. Students will read them and put them in order, and then as another layer on top, you can have them add images, photos, clip art, whatever, to illustrate comprehension of each of the sentences. There are tons of reading activities you could do, so I'm going to just link my playlist on reading activities for you here. In this video, I just wanted to share some of my favorites with you. All right, let's get into listening activities for your stations. The first one I have for you is classic dictation, and this is one where students listen to the target language and they're just going to write what they hear. And this could be a recording, this could be one of their teammates or their group mates reading and everybody else writing, up to you. Listen, write, and draw is kind of a twist on read and draw that I had shared earlier, but students listen to sentences, write what they hear, and then draw or illustrate to show comprehension. Sound effect reading is super fun to do in small groups at stations. If you're not familiar with it, students are going to read a story or listen to a story, and as they're listening, they're going to make sound effects that go with the words they hear. So if a gato is in your story, you're probably going to go, meow, while you're reading. Another one of my favorite listening activities is from Senior Wooly, and it's called Chunky Monkey. What they're going to do is they're going to listen to a song, or you could do this with a reading too, and they're going to have pieces of paper with chunks of what they're listening to in front of them. And while they listen, they're going to put it in order according to what they hear. You can make those chunks bigger or smaller depending on how difficult or how easy you want it to be for the students. Ed puzzles are also a really great listening activity because you can use them with anything. And I love interpretive quick quizzes from Senora Chase. They are a quick comprehension activity you can do with any reading. Make sure you check out her blog post for a free download of either a digital and a printable version of those, I believe. Last listening activity I have for you for this bank of station ideas is Letra Equivocada, and that is from Spanish Plans. And as you might guess from the title, they're going to listen to something and they're going to have a printout in front of them. And whenever what they're listening to doesn't match with what's in front of them, they're either going to highlight it or underline it. And you could have it be either way, right? Where the reading is correct and the listening is wrong. Or you could have it where the listening is correct and what they're reading is wrong, right? The important part is that there's a difference, and they're going to be marking when what they hear and what they see doesn't match up. All right, let's talk writing activities. So my first writing activity to share with you is called Writing Between the Lines, and it's exactly what you might expect. If you have a line from a story here and a line from a story here, you've removed some of the story and you've given them some blank space. You're going to have them write what happened between here and here. And you could do this a couple of different ways. You could have it be kind of a remembering memory, thinking about what happened in the story, or a rereading activity if you don't want them to have to remember, right? Maybe they have to reread and say, oh, here's what happened. Or it could also be kind of a creative writing piece where students have a version of the story that you've been working with, and now you're going to say, okay, imagine what happened between here and here. Let's come up with what could have happened, and we're going to think a little creatively. And that's something you probably would want to do with your higher levels. Definitely not right away at the beginning of Spanish 1. Another writing activity is kind of a two-parter for stations. It's from the game Details, which is an idea Senora Chase has shared on her blog. And what you're going to do is you're going to have them prep for a whole class game as part of the station. In Details, the game is who can remember the most details and write them down. So after students have written all of the details as a station activity, the next day or maybe later on the class period, you can then play the game Details, as she describes in her blog. Two of my favorite writing activities that are really rereading activities are True and False, where students are just going to write true and false statements about whatever they've been reading, and Most Important Sentence, which, as you might guess, students choose the most important sentence. And the writing component of this is that they're going to rewrite the sentences that are the most important. Make sure you check out the tutorial on that one so that makes sense. Another great creative writing option for a writing station is a roll a story. And basically what that is students are going to use a die. They're going to roll it to determine the key elements of a story. Then they're going to think creatively and come up with a story that uses those key details from their dice roll. And you can give them as much support and scaffolding as they need, or you can just kind of let them go, and it's a lot of fun. Last but not least, I have scrambled sentences for you, and they are exactly what they sound like. Students are going to get sentences that are all cut apart, and they're going to unscramble them and put them in order and then write what the sentence should actually say. Okay, last but not least, we're going to talk about speaking. One of my favorite speaking activities to do as a station is conversation cards, and they are exactly what they sound like. They are little cards with either questions or topics on them. You're going to put them in the middle of the station. Student is going to draw a card, and they're either going to ask their partner, and they'll go all the way around, or they'll just, mention it to the group, and everybody will talk about it, and when conversation kind of lags, they'll just pick another card, and they'll keep going. Another station option for you that will kind of depend on your students, you know your students best, is the ball toss game. And I've talked about this before as a getting to know you activity or an icebreaker game, and it's really one of my favorites for that, but it actually works really well as a station if you have the space and if your students can handle it. But basically students will ask a question, toss a ball to their teammate, the teammate will catch it, answer the question, and then it will continue. And you can either give them a bank of questions, you can say your questions need to be about this topic, or you can even use the conversation cards again and they draw a card, ask the question, and then toss the ball. And you might want to send them out in the hallway, maybe you have a larger space in your classroom where this works, or maybe you might say, Ashley, there is no way I'm letting students play with a ball unsupervised out in the hallway. You know your class is best, it's fine. Another option for you for speaking activities are fortune tellers or cootie catchers. These are from La Secundaria, and I'm doing this with my hands because they're like the little foldy paper things that where you open them up and they ask each other questions. Another great speaking activity that you might have to scaffold for your novices depending on where they are is 2 truths and a lie. And you can scaffold this for them by having them write their 2 truths and a lie first before they say them out loud to their teammates. But depending, like I said, depending on their level, they might be able to just do this off the top of their head. And this could be 2 truths and a lie about a topic related to their unit. It could be just, hey, you're having some speaking time at this station. Talk about your weekend. Talk about what you did today. 2 truths and a lie about yourself, right? Getting to know you, icebreaker kind of style. Either way, this is one of my favorite games to play to get students talking because inevitably they'll be like, wait, what? That was not true? I've shared before about Sonidos Secretos from the Engaged Spanish Classroom, and it is one of my all-time favorite speaking activities. If you've not tried this one in your classes, you need to go to her blog and learn how to play it ASAP because you will not regret it. This could be a whole class game, but it works really, really well as a station for students to play with each other. And last but not least, heads up, but scaffolded from Quizlet. And the reason why I recommend scaffolding it, again, is like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I usually work with novice levels. So asking them to play heads up is a lot of output. I like to scaffold this by using a Quizlet deck, and I have a tutorial explaining how I like to do this that, of course, I will link for you down below. I know there are so many activities you could do with stations, but I just wanted to give you a place to start as you're planning because I know it can be really overwhelming if you're trying to just think of everything from scratch. So hopefully this video will become a great resource for you as you're trying to come up with and plan stations for your classes. Remember, you do not have to recreate the wheel and do something brand new every single time. It can be really hard if you're trying to do stations and there's 4 new activities your students are trying to learn how to do. In fact, I highly recommend doing stations that are activities you've done as a whole class, so that way when students get to the activity they say, oh, we're just gonna play Me Lapis, cool, and they already know what they're doing. It's a lot less for you to manage if you're not running from group to group to group to group trying to say, okay, here's what you're doing here, here's what you're doing here, oh, you've never done this before, okay, let me explain it to you. Even with an objective sheet, instructions, and all that sort of stuff, we all know sometimes students need a little bit more support. So save yourself some time and effort streamlining your stations and reuse activities that they're already familiar with, already comfortable with, and already confident at doing by themselves. If you're looking for even more activities to help you while you're lesson planning, you're gonna love this video here. It's got 30 different activities you can use, whether as a whole class, pairs, small groups, in stations, individually. It's a whole mix of reading, writing, listening, speaking, all focused on delivering comprehensible input to your students. And it's kind of set up in the same way where I'm going to give you an idea, give you a quick explanation, and then you can go learn more if you want to learn more. So if you're feeling like, oh, I'm running out of things to do, this is a great resource for you. And I'll make sure to link it down in the description box below as well. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.